What's your lemonade stand story?
And he was like, YouTube's going to be the next big thing, Devin. Like, you need to get on that. You need to get on it early. And I'm like,
And all of us, we all go through our own trials, our own level of stuff.
Sure hope this works out. Otherwise, this will be a huge waste of time.
I mean, what else is it all about other than just taking risks and continuing to try and grow and hopefully get better and better at making things?
And most of the billion-dollar brands you've seen were started by people that were just solving a problem for themselves.
We're telling lemonade stand stories from some of the world's top creators, makers, and go-getters.
We're rolling right now.
Hey, just roll.
We're having fun. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this podcast today is sponsored by Yalla, a task management and team collaboration software that we use at Lemonade Stand. We use Yalla to keep all of our team members organized, wherever they are. In fact, we used it to plan and organize this podcast. Visit yalla.team, that's YALLA.team, and try it for free. We also have a special offer for all listeners of this podcast. Use promo code LEMONADE and get a lifetime 25% off if you upgrade. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Charan Prabhakar with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and I'm here with Colby Jenkins, who was highly recommended to be on this podcast. He is a former Green Beret Special Forces soldier, served in, I believe it was the Army. Did you serve in Afghanistan or anything like that?
Afghanistan, yes, yeah, in South America.
Man. And I cannot wait to get into those stories because I know like some of the stories, when we're having a bad day, it's like, oh man, maybe things just didn't go our way. Your bad day is like people like passing away, and you trying to get out of there. So that's a whole different type of bad day. But you've done some incredible things. And I know you worked at the Pentagon. You also worked at Google, and now you're at Dixie State, and you are a public speaker talking about creating an A-team and helping people just become the best versions of themselves. And so I'm super excited to kind of dive in with you and hear a little bit more about you, your stories and whatnot, because just from, we have a mutual friend, Mitch Labrum, I guess he's your cousin, I believe.
Yes.
And he was just ranting and raving about you. And he's just like, dude, he's like, you've got to get Colby on immediately. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And when he told me a little bit about your description, I was like, Mitch, we got to get Colby on immediately. So
well, Mitch is too kind. He's a good man.
So I appreciate it. So, I would love to hear about how you joined the Special Forces and how that all kind of went down. The whole thing about the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast is about people's lemonade stand stories, their beginnings into their careers or what avenue they first went on, and then like how they pivoted and all that good stuff. So, yeah, if you don't mind, let's go from the beginning of that whole thing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me on, and thanks to Mitch for recommending and giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it. I hear nothing but good things about this podcast, and happy to share what experience I have that hopefully it will help others, because heaven knows I've had plenty of people give me a hand up, so I'm happy to pay it forward. In terms of my path to becoming a Green Beret in the Special Forces, I would say it starts way back in childhood. I've had the privilege and blessing of being surrounded by great family, extended family relatives like Mitch, his family, uncles, aunts, and of course my own awesome parents. One family member in particular was my grandfather, Lynn Labrum. Mitch and I share Grandpa Labrum as he was the father of my mom and Mitch's dad. And he was a World War II veteran, true Greatest Generation member. And he had a great influence on me in terms of just being patriotic, being a good member of society, and ultimately on a path towards the military. Kind of growing up in his shadow of military service really inspired me. And as I got older into high school and learned about what options could take me down that path, I learned about the West Point, the United States Military Academy, in New York, and I worked to get accepted there and was accepted, and So from high school, a couple weeks later, I found myself in New York at West Point at the military
And
academy.
was this something like when you like heard it, you were like, this is my calling. Like, I love this. It's speaking to my soul. Like, how did that kind of resonate and come about?
Yeah, it really was, and really back to just the interest and desire I had for military service growing up in my grandpa's shadow. Just I
Yeah.
wanted to be like him, wanted to have those types of experiences, and then learning about West Point and what it produces in terms of leaders for the nation and just overall experience. That was
Mhm.
what I wanted to do, and so through 2 years at West Point, after 2 years I left and served a church mission for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. So I left, went to Brazil where I
Oh,
served for two
cool.
years, and then came back to West Point. And there's more stories
Yeah, yeah,
woven in
yeah.
there in
Yeah.
terms of talking about taking lemonade, and
Yes, yes, which
so,
we will definitely like dive into.
yeah, and so finished West Point, graduated, went to Ranger School, became an Army Ranger, and then into the infantry before ultimately going to Special Forces selection, where I was selected and then completed training and became a Green Beret. And that was just the Cliff Notes version of
Yeah,
getting into
well,
special.
I gotta say, because I've never done military service or anything like that, but I've had friends that have gone through. I don't even know like the ranking system, so I'd
Yeah.
embarrass myself trying to say what it is, but um, it's no joke. All I know is like you're getting up early, you're working all day. It's you're kind of beating your body up, basically pushing it to the limit in a sense. And did you feel like that was your experience as well, kind of going through all the different ranking systems?
Yes, definitely. But more so the training, particular Ranger schools designed to make you want to quit every
Yeah.
day. And
Oh
so
man.
breaking you down and then putting you in teams, leadership opportunities where you now have to lead when you're at your worst, you're feeling your worst. And how are you going to overcome these challenges?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely. And when I speak and work with teams and companies, that's a key component that I teach in terms of perseverance.
Yes.
At that moment when you are wanting to quit
Yeah.
and you just quit tomorrow, and
Uh,
and what helps you get to that point of, hey, I'm at my lowest, but I'm going to hang on for one more day. And so I love talking about that
well,
with
how did
team.
that how did that how'd that go for you? I'm so curious because when you're broken down and you're like, I give up. I cannot go any further. And yet you still found yourself putting one foot in front of the other. How did you do that?
You know what? A key component in those moments of trial is service,
Hmm.
service to others or being the recipient of service. I have incredible stories and friends to this day who I remember exact moments where they may have given me extra food,
Hmm.
their own little food stash, or may have carried some of my weight just because I couldn't do it at that moment. And then in turn, I, I could do similar for others. And so I found when my head is down, uh, being able to look up and find someone who's hurting just a little bit more than me, and
Yeah.
helping that person really helps you escape your own personal uh, turmoil.
That's such an interesting and powerful concept. I one of the greatest principles that Jesus ever taught was to, it's like to love someone is to really serve them.
Yeah,
And I think that's such an important and powerful principle, because you lose yourself, like you literally lose yourself when you're
yes,
in the service of other people. And it's that sense of completely losing yourself, like your identity, your ego, who you are, for the greater good, and only to realize that you yourself are much greater than who you thought you were because of the service. And that's how
yeah,
you discover that. um but
definitely.
man, it's powerful stuff. So
Yeah.
now,
And
do
and
you
there
have
were
it?
daily occurrences
Yeah.
of that in Ranger School, and then later in Special Forces selection where you're down and
Hmm.
injured or something, and you just help your buddy to your left or right, or somebody helps you, and that's what really pulls you through those difficult
So
moments.
did you have like did you actively engage in warfare in what you were doing?
I did it later in my special forces career. We deployed my A team to Afghanistan, where we spent just under a year, and then after Afghanistan into Paraguay and Colombia, doing more covert indirect operations.
And so when you're in those type of circumstances, which I have never been in, how do you describe those experiences? Like, are you kind of, I've heard of what's called a hive mentality, you know, where it's like you're in one mind, basically your entire troop is like, you have like one thought almost, like how like the birds fly and they can immediately turn angles at like at a whim. Is that kind of like what you went through?
It does, yeah, it does take on that characteristic, especially when it comes to basic tactics. For example, if my team is going into a village and we're going to have to clear several mud houses, or mud huts,
Mm-hmm.
there are deliberate ways that when we go in a room, depending on where you're at in the stack, that it becomes almost muscle memory.
Wow.
So there are battle drills that we train on and we rehearse so that in the moment we can adapt, because the one thing I talk about as well, and when I present, is the enemy always gets a vote, whether it's a real enemy like the Taliban or just an obstacle in your life. No matter how well we plan for a mission or prepared or had intelligence about a target, there was always some variable that could pop up in the
Yeah.
moment you least expected. So being able to have that teamwork and the ability to execute battle drills, the basics, shoot, move, communicate, um, help us overcome those unexpected
Yeah,
curveballs.
it's interesting, right? Like there's like the two factors of like, hey, preparing for something, like having the goals, having the exact target, the exact mission, but then also being able to improvise right at that very moment. Because you know, life and whatnot, it constantly throws different things your way, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I improvise, or do I get paralyzed? You know?
Yeah.
And I know there have been many times where I've been paralyzed because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't see this coming. I don't know what to do, where to go. And like, did you ever have any of your men or you yourself like get into a mode where you like suddenly you start panicking, or was it just more like instincts kicked in and you're like, nope, we know exactly what to do to get out of this situation?
Yeah, I think I'd be lying if I said I never felt a moment of maybe panic's not the right word, but moment of that pucker factor goes
Yeah,
up where holy smokes.
yeah.
And when I speak, I open my presentation talking about when my helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan. And
Oh my gosh, tell us about that story.
yeah, so talk about a curveball. So there was a particular group of Taliban we'd been tracking and chasing around for a while, and we finally got a firm fix on them and had the air assets to marshal an assault fairly quickly. And so off we went, and I had my assault force split into two Chinook helicopters. The Chinooks are the Army's
Mm-hmm.
large helicopters with twin rotors. My helicopter was lead coming into the target, and as we came in high off a ridgeline coming down, a Taliban machine gun just totally shot up the rear rotor of my helicopter.
No way.
The pilot immediately started calling to me saying, "Hey, we're going down. We're losing lift. We got to get your guys off. Got to get them off." And we were high on a ridgeline coming down, so he was able to still maintain some hover so we could get off before he went down on the other side of the ridgeline. But this caused everything to change because we'd planned to come in together on one side,
Yeah.
assault across with an air blocking element on the other side. But so now my other half of my team had to flare and go around to the far side.
Hmm.
And now we were divided, assaulting towards each other with the bad guys between us, and me as the commander thinking, hey, we're shooting at each other. We're hearing each
Yeah.
other's gunfire
Yeah.
with Taliban shooting in between. And so that's where it came back to what we were just talking about earlier, that the ability of my Green Beret teammates to stick to the basics, to know when to shoot, move, and communicate, not lose their minds in that moment of chaos
Mm.
really is what carried the day for us.
Did you have you ever been in situations where you lost a fellow soldier or a fellow team
I
member?
fortunately have not.
Mm.
No, I have not.
And that's an incredible thing. I mean, look, I love, like, like sometimes going into the scriptures and you hear about like the stripling warriors who fought so bravely, but none of them they were all injured, but none of them had died. And you're like, whoa, that's a crazy miracle. Does that even happen? But like,
Yeah.
you're like a living proof that that can
Oh,
happen. And that's a very powerful thing. And hats off to you for being able to like have a clear enough head and clear enough mind when you're able to like go in these type of situations. But
well, to be clear, it wasn't me. I mean, I'm fortunate to have had a tremendous team of experts
yeah.
and pilots who could skillfully support us, and we had to stay out on that target overnight because we had a down helicopter and crew. So it took, a huge team effort to keep us somewhat safe and protected during the night, because we had the capability to intercept communications, and we could hear the bad guys talking throughout the valley,
Oh my
watching us
gosh. Yeah.
and trying to reorganize themselves, because we put a huge dent in them that day. But now we were down in the middle of
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
country.
You're an enemy. You're behind enemy lines,
Yeah, with a big down helicopter, and so we were able. The story ended up well, but a bad day for the enemy. But it was a long night that night.
How did you guys get out of that situation is what I'm wondering.
Yeah. So fortunately, there's a down. It's called a DART team, down aircraft recovery team. Was able to fly in the next day and work miraculously to drop that rear rotor transmission and put in a new one.
Oh my gosh.
And the pilots flew out that Chinook. They were able to salvage it and not have to blow it up in place. But yeah, throughout the night, I had sniper teams out. I had roving patrols, because we knew we were down in a valley and we had eyes that were watching us. And
Oh man.
so it was tenuous for many hours.
See, and I think that situation is a very applicable situation for life in ways, right? Where you kind of feel like you are down and like the whole world is on top of you,
Yeah.
like you have like kind of like evil negativity kind of all surrounding you. Um, and to be able to keep your wits about you during those times when it's like you don't see the way out, you know, I think um that's the interesting thing that sometimes the world faces, right? Where like the whole world together went into COVID-19, right? Where the whole world
Yeah.
kind of shut down, and so we don't know the end game. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know how it's going to escape. So do you feel like some of the principles and skills that you learn help kind of keep your level head about you during this time of life right now?
Yes, definitely. Being able to adapt,
Hmm.
the importance of communicating with your teammates, both those that are your peers, in a work situation, with those that you lead or report to you, making sure that they understand, hey, here's the lay of the land from my
Yeah.
perspective. Here's what I understand. Here's the new operational environment,
Hmm.
and here's how we are going to adapt and be successful. I think clear communication with those you are responsible for really mitigates that anxiety, that fear of the uncertainty, because people can have confidence in, hey, Col- Colby knows what's going on the best that he can. Yeah, we're leading through this uncertainty. We've established clear benchmarks to
Mm.
pull us along. It's not just us flailing in the dark and hoping
Yeah.
everything's going to be okay. Yeah, people look for leadership, and they want someone a team to establish those guidelines, those parameters that pull us through those uncertain times.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting interesting way to live, and like interesting things to learn. It's in like I it, we had a family trial hit us a few years ago, and it's very interesting what happens to me when we go through trials.
Yeah.
I get eerily calm. I tend to not panic. I just get eerily calm, and I'm like, okay, well, this is the situation, and what do we need to do to mitigate it or to resolve it? What are the first steps that we need to take, you know? And I guess that's a big gift. It's a big blessing, I would say, because yeah, I know like other members of my family kind of like gave into their emotions, right? And became like overly, like they were freaking out. They're like, what are we gonna do? This is awful, you know, all this stuff. And you know, years later, everything got resolved and everything's peaceful now, and it's all good. But I remember thinking about that because I think in life we are going to be thrown into situations where it is a challenge, and it's like, how do we get out of these situations? But I love what you were saying about clear communication and relying on each other, and being able to have like those clear benchmarks and say, okay, these are the things that we can control, so let's focus on the things that we can control.
Yes.
And it seems to me, as you were kind of focusing on the things that you can control, more things that you could control kind of came back into your life. If
Yes.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And, you know, and thank you for sharing your experience. I can relate in the chaos of being shot down and so forth, being able to remove the drama from it and just
Hmm.
focus on, okay, we still have a mission. We still need to maneuver to this point.
Yeah.
How do we maneuver it? Taking the drama out and focusing on the objective tasks that can be accomplished.
Hmm.
You don't just become a robot, but you still want to be empathetic and compassionate and a human as a leader.
Hmm.
But being able to lead through these points of uncertainty and obstacles by focusing on the objective tasks allow people to really latch onto you as a leader and you to pull
Yeah.
them forward.
So how do you find that balance? How do you find the balance of being empathetic, of being a human being, of being kind, and at the same time being able to pull the drama out? Because I think that's such an important aspect of life. Whenever we face challenges, pulling the drama out, keeping the level head, but being compassionate at the same time.
Yeah. You know, I'm fortunately I'm married to Heather, my wonderful friend and wife,
Yeah.
and she teaches me a lot of this. Where I tend to come home and go right to, okay, I need to do this, and this before I can sit down on the couch and
Hmm.
relax. Whereas she may, when I walk in the door, may want to not want to just talk with me, want to
Yeah.
share, hey, how was your day? Here's what I did, and so me just being aware of here's how I may be programmed and here's how she may be programmed, and just being aware of that allows me to be empathetic to her needs and
Hmm.
and and balance that with my inclinations, so that we can maintain a good balance. And I think that's relatable to the work environment as well, as you get to know those you're working with as human beings first,
Hmm.
to understand what makes people tick, what are their hot buttons to
Yeah.
push, or how are they kind of wired. Then you can be sensitive to, hey, here's how I'm wired, here's how they are wired.
Mhm.
Let's find some compromise.
Yeah, some compromise. Yeah, it's interesting. I work in the film business, which there's a lot of communication that needs to take place among a lot of team members to make films happen,
Yeah.
and all kinds of different personalities, all kinds
Oh,
of
I bet.
different different ideas and all this type of stuff. And what's interesting is I find that I was on a show called Criminal Minds. This was back in 2017. I acted in the show, and I was so fascinated being on the show because I would just I loved seeing the set work, like
Mm.
all the different people working together to make the show a reality. And they've been doing this for about 13 seasons, so they're very seasoned with each other.
Yeah.
But they were so kind to each other. That was
Mm.
the thing that I noticed immediately. They were so kind to me. They welcomed me on set. They were so kind to each other, and everything moved so efficiently, like a well-oiled machine. And I'm like, wow, like no wonder the show's been going on for so long. Like just the energy among the people themselves was so positive and so kind and just so uplifting, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing because sometimes we get a little too I don't know. I think we tend to let ego sometimes get in the way, or we sometimes think this has got to be my way, right?
Mhm.
Um, how have you been able to kind of like get rid of your own ego? Because I'm talking to you and you just seem like the most humble, nice human being ever. So,
Well, thank you. I can only imagine from the world
hmm.
you've operated in. I think of Tom Cruise comes to mind and
Hmm.
yelling at his castmates
Oh
and
yeah.
I can imagine the egos you've had to navigate.
Hmm.
Uh, for me, it's I think just being mindful that I've been blessed with tremendous experiences.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to be placed in unique situations that have given me these incredible opportunities. Um, and then just like you said, being kind. I think you get more out of life by recognizing others for who they are, what they
Yeah.
can do, and what they've done. Uh, from smiling, being happy, takes more energy to be negative, which I can certainly
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But it's why go through all of that to
Yeah.
waste that energy.
It is. It's really interesting how much energy it takes to be negative and upset at the world and upset at
Yeah,
other people, you know?
yeah.
That's it's a very true statement. I was going to ask you, this is kind of a change of topic real quick. Did you ever suffer from PTSD? Like being, because I've heard of a lot of people that have come back from military service and they either have nightmares or they're kind of like reliving like battle scenes and things like that. Did that ever affect you?
I was never like formally diagnosed, but I certainly had struggles coming back from Afghanistan. Primarily with I had two young daughters at the time
Yeah.
when I went to Afghanistan. My our second daughter was just 2 weeks old, and I left for almost so I missed almost her first year of life,
Mm,
and while in Afghanistan doing operations, unfortunately, when we're clearing a target, it's not pleasant for families, women, children, as we are, trying to pull bad guys out of their beds. So there's a lot of screaming and noise, and so coming back home and having a, a baby and
oh
little and
gosh.
a toddler, while
Yeah.
I love them with all my heart, there were moments where I just had to walk out because yeah, there were triggers that would happen, or being in large groups, or driving down
Yeah.
the road. So yeah, there were times, but fortunately, with a strong wife and just being aware and good friends that are going through similar,
Hmm.
that keeps us well grounded.
It's interesting because the topic of triggers is very interesting to me. I think you can be going along fairly confident, all kinds of things are going well, and all of a sudden some little thing can happen, just something it's so unexpected, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, you're like living in these narratives of negative thoughts. You're beating yourself up. It's like you're not even the same person you used to be because something happened that caused a little trigger inside of your brain to like be like, wait a minute, this reminds me of this and this and this, and the world is a horrible place all of a sudden. um, how do you help people, especially as you're helping them with leadership and building an A team? How do you help them overcome triggers that would affect them in a negative way?
Uh, for personally, it's I something that's right fresh in my mind. Earlier this week, we had a Dixie Development Day for staff. So
Mhm.
basically, we carved out half the day for Dixie staff, Dixie State University staff, and we had professional development. And there was a tremendous speaker who talked along these lines. How do you maintain positive outlook? And I regret I forget his name, but one thing that I clearly remember is he talked about the seeds that you plant in your mind. There are lots of seeds that get planted every day. It triggers, like you said.
Yeah.
The ones that grow are the ones that we water.
Mm.
So are you watering those triggers, those seeds that get planted? And if you are, then and it's not a positive seed, then stop watering it
Yeah.
and water those that are positive. And so that really stuck with me. Is certainly there nobody has a perfect day. Mistakes
Sure.
happen. Um, other people's choices impact our lives as well. So you can choose to, hey, that seed's going to hit, that action's going to hit your head,
Yeah.
but are you going to allow it to stick? And if it does, are you going to then water it and let
Mm.
it grow, or just ignore it and water something else?
And I love the analogy. It's like, what do you put your energy towards?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
exactly are you feeding? Because you have the choice, you know, you have the choice to kind of let it pass through like a cloud, or be like, oh my gosh, that cloud is there. It's there. And I'm going to like keep on feeding it with more energy, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the next thing I know, I'm going to have a horrible day, or I'm going to treat other people horribly, because I have chosen to let a seed come in and like start watering it immediately. And then you start clouding, your judgment's clouded, and you think everything is wrong because of whatever seed is kind of going on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept. Now, one of the big things about the Lemonade Stand Story podcast is about hearing people's days when they've had lemons thrown at them, like really, really tough lemons. And I know we talked about being shot down in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
or as a helicopter. That seems like a pretty
Hard to top that. Yeah.
perfectly lemon-filled day, but you turn that into lemonade in the form of a new rotor coming in and saving you guys. But has there been anything more where maybe in I guess present day situations where you've had some lemons thrown your way and you've been able to change it into a lemonade type of situation?
Yeah, definitely. When I left the Pentagon, when I left government
Mhm.
service, I was a civilian at the time. Made the decision with my wife, prayerful consideration. Do we stay in Washington D.C.? I had another job opportunity there,
Yeah.
but I also had an opportunity to go work for Google.
Okay.
So we were at a crossroads. Do we take this leap away from government and DC, where I'd been for 10 plus years, and now go into the great unknown of the business private sector and Google? And so we decided, yeah, let's make a change. So I joined Google. That opportunity took us to Tampa, Florida.
Hmm.
My wife, family bought a new house. Less than a year into Tampa, that whole operation in Florida, Google shut down.
No way.
It
Wow.
was part of Google Fiber, when Google was first starting to consider building out a fiber network. And
Hmm.
the founders of Google decided, this isn't really Google's thing. We're going to shut down all the exploratory markets, and Florida was one of them.
Mm.
So there I was, having left what could have been a great job and situation in DC for the unknown, and now I was without a job and a brand new house and kids in
Oh,
new schools. How could this happen? We
right.
we've been
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
been prayerful. We felt good about it, and now I'm out. I'm out of a job, and to Google's credit, they told all of us in all the markets that this happened. There's really a long runway. Take the time you need. If you want to leave Google, we'll help you find other opportunities. If you want to stay with Google, we'll help you as well. And so I wanted to stay. It was great to work for Google. It's a very generous opportunity. Google is a generous employer, but it now required us to weigh in, venture into another
Yeah.
uncertainty.
Hmm.
And fortunately, I found a job that took us to Google headquarters. But now, we were moving here less than a year again, and uprooting all over again. So there was a time when, from DC to Tampa, now to California, where my wife and I thought, what did we do?
Yeah.
How's this gone like this? And now looking back over 4 years, we can see how those experiences, where they may have been frustrating to us in the time, the growth that we experienced,
Sure.
the friends that we made along the way, um, we wouldn't change anything, frankly.
Mm.
So I wish myself now could tell myself
Yeah.
4 years ago that, hey, that hang in there. It's going to be great, and won't be easy, but you're going to grow a lot.
Yeah. It's so interesting. As time has gone on, because my career, I started in Utah and I moved to California. I lived in LA for like 9 years, and I never thought I was going to leave LA. I was like, yeah, this is it. I love it, and it's been good, and I was getting on some really cool TV shows and stuff like that. And then I just felt like, you know what? I want to keep creating my own stuff, and it's hard to do that in LA. So I moved back to Utah, and I never thought I'd come back. I honestly was like, nope, LA is my place. That's what I want to. That's where I want to be, right? But I will say this, like the more I've lived my own life, I've learned the power of being nimble is an is an amazing thing to be able to do, right? And
Yeah.
it's tricky because especially when you have a family, you've got kids, you're it's not just you, right? You're taking your wife, your kids, uprooting their entire lifestyle and going cross country. That's a tough thing to do, but I'm so glad that you were able to do it, and I'm so glad that you were able to learn all the lessons you learned along the way and make new friendships. I think that's really a powerful thing. So
Yes, definitely.
that's so awesome. So let me ask you this: what is the greatest source of your joy right now?
Well, right off the top, my family.
Hmm.
Without my family, I would be uh, a tumbleweed in this world, just
Yeah,
going around. So yeah, I gain great joy from watching my daughters grow up and experience life and
yeah.
helping them through their decisions.
Hmm.
I gain joy from being around my wife and having conversations with her and spending time together. Um, so yeah, my family definitely. I, I I gain joy from trying to stay in some type of shape, uh,
Yeah.
battling the age that is happening and with this old body. So I gain satisfaction from getting out of bed every day and trying to go work out in some way.
That's awesome. What do you do for working out? What's your main thing?
I used to be a amateur long distance runner. I would
Oh wow.
run a ton, but now I don't run anymore. My left
Yeah.
knee is a couple surgeries, and now I can't run essentially, and so I swim a lot now,
Hmm.
a lot of swimming, and then biking as well, a little bit of weights.
No, that's awesome. That's so great. Like I realized that I needed to start working out as well, but for me, if something is not fun, I just won't do it, and it's got to be fun in some capacity. So for me, I discovered tennis to be like the most fun thing I can do. So I'm like an avid tennis player. I try playing every day, and I played this morning and I played terribly, but it was okay because I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm out here. We're having fun. That's the most important thing. I don't need to I don't have to feel like I've got to be like this professional tennis player to have a good time.
yeah, yeah.
So
I
so
agree.
that
Same way. I may look like I'm swimming in cement,
yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but I'm swimming.
No, that's
No
awesome.
gold
I'm
medals
so
for
glad,
me.
and I'm so glad that you found those things for yourself, to keep yourself motivated and to keep yourself going, to keep yourself getting out of bed. Um, because I know for a lot of people, getting out of bed and just facing the day is a massive, massive challenge for them, and being able to say, hey, I can actually do that right now. That's a powerful thing. So,
Yeah,
um,
and for
yeah,
me, just if I could add, what
yeah,
I
please.
think I think everyone has that struggle. I don't think there's a person who doesn't wake up and say 5 more minutes,
Yeah.
10 more minutes, and what helps me overcome that is I pack all my stuff the night before, and it's right there, and
Oh.
it would almost be it would be I purposely make it a hassle if I was to stay home and
Mm.
shower and get ready at home. I would now have to unpack my bag and get everything out, and it would
Yeah.
just go to the gym. Just it's all ready to
Uh,
go. Just get dressed and go. And so I try and remove those obstacles or remove those opportunities for me to
say
just
no.
say no,
Yeah.
and that helps me roll.
No, I love that idea of hey, preemptively knowing, hey, who you are,
Yeah,
what's gonna be the greatest challenges, right? Um, my buddy and I, we go play tennis like around 7:45 in the morning, and so I have to set multiple alarms, because I'm like, I know me, and I'm like, I know that once that alarm goes, I'm gonna set the next one, so I know what I'm gonna do, but it's again, it's the joy of the sport that wins out my laziness to stay in bed.
yeah. Well,
So
that's great.
that's awesome. So we talked about that. What would you say are your greatest fears right now?
Well, greatest fears. Um, I think for me, there are always financial fears. Hey, do I
Mhm.
have enough to meet our needs? Are we living within our means? We are fortunate right now to be building a new house. We've never, in our 20 plus years of marriage, had an opportunity to like put down roots and build a house. And so
Hmm.
we're on the downward slope of that. So
That's
I
awesome.
walk into I walk into the house and I love it. It's beautiful, but my stomach turns thinking, okay, we got to pay for this too.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
just those are fears that just, I mean, first world problems. To be building a new house
Yeah.
stuff. But
Where are you guys building your home at?
in St. George proper, just south of Snow Canyon High School, kind of on
Okay.
the west side of St. George.
That's awesome. That's awesome. St. George is a beautiful place. It's a very hot place, but it's
Yeah.
a very beautiful place. And yeah, hats off to you. That's amazing, especially in this climate right now. Building a home is a challenge for sure.
Yes.
With
Yeah.
housing prices like exponentially getting higher and higher and higher. Um, so you've taken the courage and are doing something that I wish I had the courage to do right now. So I was actually planning on buying a home myself. Well, just buying a home, not even building one, just buying one. And I felt like, well, you know what? I better hold off. I better hold off right now and just kind of see and be in a waiting pattern and seeing what happens because
Yeah.
it's just getting so high right now.
Yeah.
So
It's a seller's market, that's for
it's
sure.
definitely a seller's market. So no, that's a good fear to have. But and especially because like what do you make of all of the things that are happening in the world? Like gas prices are like exponentially going through the roof right now. Like a lot of prices are going up on a lot of different things. What do you make of all of that stuff?
Yeah. Without venturing too far into personal politics and
Sure.
views, I just generally will say there seems to be a lot of uncertainty at the top in terms
Yeah.
of policy direction, and the different world actors are taking advantage of that
Yeah.
and able to disrupt the markets, whether it's shutting down a pipeline,
Yep.
whether it's ignoring uh, um, greenhouse standards that we are now being subjected to and other countries are not.
Yeah.
Those inequalities that happen that trickle down to us paying $1 more at the gas pump, that really affects the common American. I think when there's that uncertainty at the top and the fluctuation, people see that and are not settled, and then that causes instability in the market as well. I'm not a financial
Yeah.
analyst, but that's my amateur perspective.
That's your amateur perspective. Well, I think that's what it is, and it kind of goes back to the conversations that we were having regarding facing like just unsettling situations and like pulling the drama out of the situation, but still being like a human being that can have compassion for everybody else, and say, okay, the situation that we are being dealt without any of our control is a very unsettling one. So, how do we find peace amongst ourselves and with each other and all that stuff?
Yeah,
And the situation is so unsettling. You
yeah,
know, any advice on that aspect of things?
yeah. You're, what's coming to mind is I remember a similar situation. Someone had asked me a question. Why bother? Why bother even getting involved? Why
Um,
let's why I don't even watch the news anymore because it's just a lost cause.
sure.
And I quickly say no, it's not. Where change happens is at the grassroots level. I saw a news clip last night. I try not to watch the news, but I saw one in particular where a father was upset with the type of material that his child was being forced to read in high school, and it was very graphic adult material with adult language. And
Mm,
he confronted the school board and read it and said, why is my daughter being forced to read this stuff? Why?
yeah.
You know, and so by the point I'm trying to make is if there is something that you feel strongly about, then get involved. And it's just a matter of uh, talking with leadership. Don't just throw the monkey on their back. Actually, take the monkey off and work on it together and bring
Yeah.
solutions. Everyone can be involved at the local level and
Yeah.
then trickle up. It doesn't always have to trickle down.
Exactly. Exactly. Because then it's almost like we take like a little bit of a victim mentality, saying, well, this is what we have. This is what we're being dealt. We can't do a single thing about it. But I love that people can get involved in different ways, whatever ways that is. But we can all do our part to share our light, whatever that looks like. and if we can better humanity by sharing that light, even if it's just being kind to somebody, even if it's just like going out of your way to greet someone with a smile, or just to see how their day is going. I think that's a great way to like help out each other, you
Yeah.
know.
And the lemonade stand doesn't
Mhm.
always have to be lemonade. It can be pink lemonade, it can be mango lemonade, cherry
Yes,
resin lemonade. Everyone brings their own final mixture to the lemonade stand that we're talking about.
exactly. No, I
Oh,
love that. So I have one final question for you. Um, Here we are, present day, and learning all the things that you've learned right now. What advice would you give the young Colby that's about to enter infantry, that's about to be going to the Ranger School? What advice would you give that Colby?
um, be kind.
Mm,
Be kind. Build relationships of trust with people. Um, where I've gained the most value in life or learned the most, it's been when someone I've someone has treated me with respect and trust, and then
yeah,
that has been returned. And I have, whether it's someone with 4 stars on their collar that I've built a relationship with, or someone who I lead and I'm responsible for.
mm,
Uh, and I'm sure my wife would maybe roll her eyes and say, "Yeah, be kind and patient as
yeah,
well."
yeah, yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but I think back to what you said earlier too, that when we treat people with kindness, then nothing but we're more inclined to have positive, good experiences despite the negativity that may be around us.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is like discovering for ourselves, like, what kind of world do we want to live in, you know? And whatever kind of world we want to live in, that's what we have to be, right? If we want to live in a peaceful world full of kindness and joy, then we've got to find it within ourselves to be kind to people,
Yeah,
and to treat others peaceably and stuff. And
yeah. And
yeah,
if I could just, sorry to
please, no, no,
interrupt,
no, please, please.
and I want to be clear, it's not being kind with everything's rainbows and unicorns and
Hmm.
and happy. I'm not just a big marshmallow puff daddy.
Yeah,
Kindness can also come with sternness and being frank, being candid, holding people accountable for. You don't just become a pushover,
yeah,
but treating people with respect and kindness. I've been around senior leaders from the president to privates in the army, and
mm,
those that would come into a room who you knew were a flamethrower,
yeah,
you immediately turn them off, even if they had 4 stars on their collar. But those that could come into a room who their intellect demanded your respect versus their flame throwing.
yeah,
Um, there were different people who I would be more inclined to follow just by the way that they carried themselves and the way they.
yeah.
Uh, just one final quick example is
Please, yeah.
I I've been around several senior leaders and 2 different examples. One in particular, to this day, when I interact with this very senior leader, when he talks to me, he'll right off the bat say, "Hey, Colby, how's Heather and the girls?
Mm,
How are they doing?" He wants to know how we are doing as people.
mm,
Whereas
love
I've
that.
had another particular senior leader who I could spend hours with, going on morning runs, being in meetings all day, and he wouldn't even know the name of my wife. Yet I'm with him all that time and
Mm,
just me as another cog in the wheel, despite my willingness to connect on a personal level.
yeah.
So that's taught me some lessons as well.
It's such an interesting thing to connect on a personal level. I think, yeah, in my industry, like, I've had the privilege of meeting and becoming friends with like a couple of celebrity type people. And I think the reason why is just because I don't view them as celebrities. They're just my friends, you know?
Yeah,
And they're just people. And as people, like, I just care about them as human beings. And I think that's an important thing, because when you look at the grand scheme of things, we really are all people, and we all deserve to be loved and respected. And yet, like you're saying, not a pushover, not necessarily pushover, like having the confidence within yourself. But I have met people like that. Kind of going back to the Criminal Minds experience, when you have a director like calling the shots, there's what's called the first AD, and the first AD is the person that runs the set. They're the one that say, okay, we got to get this shot by this time. Now we have to move on to this thing. And they more often than not tend to be very stern people, very stern, like, all right, guys, we got to move. And they're like hustling and everything like that. But the first AD on set for this show was a woman who was so kind and so gentle that people just immediately responded so quickly. And I'm like, wow, what a beautiful form of leadership. And I loved it. I loved watching her work and just like seeing how kind she was to people and like how quickly things moved. And there was like a peaceful environment there, even though we're creating like a really intense gunfighting type of show, you know? So
I bet if there were times though when that crew maybe missed a mark, I bet she would walk over to them and in her frank but kind way say, what happened? How can we fix it? You know, I'm
exactly
sure
right.
She still corrected but she did in a kind, direct way.
Exactly right. Like, so not being afraid to correct. We know we have to be able to correct, so that way we can do it, but not in a way where you're devaluing the other human being, right? Just more of like just saying like, hey, the mark has been missed. Let's just talk a little bit about why the mark was missed, and let's do it again, you know, and let's figuring out different ways. I love that. Like, I think that's how we move forward in life, you know, is to correct our mistakes, but doing it with love and then moving forward. So, oh man, well, Colby, I appreciate this so much. Like the insights that you've given today, it's making me think a lot as well about like just different things on how I can be better as a human being. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast and give your insights.
You bet.
Yeah. Any final words before we wrap up?
If I could, thank you again to Mitch, my cousin, and to you as well for having me on. I appreciate it. I would love to interact with more friends and make new teammates, and I do so through my speaking primarily. So please, for those who are listening, check out my website, colbyjenkins.com. Just my first and last name together, colbyjenkins.com, and we can connect there. And I'm happy to partner with both companies, teams, large and small, to help them build and strengthen A teams. And a line that I love to say that is true is, you don't have to carry a rifle or wear body armor and a helmet to lead or be a member of an A team. That was just my experience. I'm happy to share those experiences with others through my work as well.
No, that's so awesome. And I'm happy to put a link as well on the bio so people can follow up and learn. But yes, Colby, thank you so much. And thank you for building A teams all throughout your life, you know, A teams that have succeeded in warfare and A teams that have now thrived and created like successful businesses and have had successful communication, interpersonal relationships with each other. Really appreciate your service.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.